Yo, what up, what up, what up? It's the C3 Fantasy Football Podcast debut, and it is draft night, or the draft recap. I got three guys, all two commissioners, one heavy hitter player from the C3 Fantasy Football League to chop it up, see what those results were coming out of the big draft. C3 Fantasy Football Challenge is the biggest, baddest fantasy football game for Panther fans. So it's where Panther fans come together. I've got tonight with me the commish, Ken Dye. What's up, my man?
Yeah, what's up, Professor?
Good to talk to you. We've got also Mel Mayock coming from Vegas.
Hey, what's going on, Professor? This is my second favorite night of the week.
And we got JP the Pope here representing. What's up, my man?
How's it going, guys?
Hey, what's up,
All right. So you guys, the crazy thing about this draft and this the C3 Fantasy Football League is that somehow I invented it. I came up with the idea. People called me Crazy Mel, and then I've never even played it.
That's why you're crazy.
I was so sad this year. I was sad. This was going to be the year I had a team, and then you know what? We had I had to get commissioners for every league, and then we just had too many people. So I'm helping you guys manage. So here's the thing. The note to all the players that if you guys are listening to this podcast later on in the league, the way I'd love to run it is if you have questions, if you have any anything you want to ask about the league or fun stuff like that, use the message boards within ESPN or hit up the commissioner of your league, and it's whoever is adjoined to my team. So you'll see my name attached with a team in every league, and whoever is with my name is the commissioner of that league. Okay, so we're gonna try to keep this short and not take up too many people's time. JP, the draft night. This is your first year in the C3 Fantasy Football Challenge, isn't it?
Yes, this is my first year doing this one.
Okay. 48 teams, 4 leagues of 12. What is the name of your league? You are forgetting.
I'm in the Muhammad League.
Muhammad. All right.
It was interesting. A lot of and what I expected was a lot of homer drafts.
Right.
So I tried to stay away from our players, thinking that I would in my head overdraft them because other people were. I mean,
Did that happen?
Devin Funchess went in round 2, which
Funchess in 2.
I like Funchess. Don't get me wrong, but not round
2. Seriously.
I mean, it helped me get some good players. I mean, that's really
round 3.
Yeah. Oh, round 3. Okay. Yeah, he was 26th pick though, so like right on the edge. Okay, so here's how the first round went for the Muhammad League. Antonio Brown comes off the board. Adrian Peterson, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham Jr. Cam goes 5th. Todd Gurley is the second running back drafted in that league behind Adrian Peterson, 6th pick. David Johnson hits number 7. Is that a surprise for you guys, David Johnson being as high as 7? JP, or is that expected?
I mean, we're not a complete PPR league. It's a half a point, so it does diminish some of his value. My problem with Johnson is he's got more handicaps than Todd Gurley does, being that you also still have Andre Ellington and Chris Johnson. So there's a chance, and they have a way better receiving core. So
right.
I still think Gurley's the better option this year because he has a rookie that they're going to try and protect, and they're going to run it a lot. He's a great runner, and they don't quite have that receiving core that you could really say is top-notch.
Right.
But he does have diminished value in PPR because he doesn't catch the ball a lot. But he is that workhorse who's going to touch the ball 25 times a game, and the guy one step behind him in the depth chart is Trey Mason, who I still don't even know if he's shown up yet.
Dude, Ty Gurley is
Let
Go
me,
ahead.
let me let me just jump in there. Just we throw acronyms around. JP, why don't you explain to people what PPR means and what a half PPR means as far
Uh,
as our league?
PPR is points per reception, so every time a player catches the ball, they would receive a point. Since we're a half PPR, you get a half of a point.
There you go.
This adds a different element, and guys like Julian Edelman becomes one of the most dangerous players because
Right.
he may only get 110 yards and a touchdown, but he'll catch the ball 11 times, and that's just as good as getting another,
50 yards. Yeah.
you know,
I want to kind of just touch on this and why we have it as a half point, right? Because I think when you're in a PPR league and it's a full point, if you calculate like what each reception is worth versus like and divide it into what other accomplishments that we value in fantasy football, say the touchdown. A touchdown's worth 6 points. So I mean that the idea is that 6 catches in a ball game is equivalent to scoring a touchdown. I don't feel like is very reflective of how the NFL, of how it works. So I think that's why we did it less, is because everything in our league is kind of based around the 6 points of the touchdown.
And let me throw in there though that everything that we did in this league really tries to reflect really what goes on the field. And Tony, I think you did a great job, leading that. One of the things I love about this league is you're only required to start one running back, because how many NFL games do you see 2 running backs out on the field together? Not too often. So, I like the way we got the extra flex in our format.
All right, so
And the other thing that I want to add to that is we also reward for long scoring plays, which,
Right.
a 60-yard bomb, it's like a dagger in the heart more than, say, oh, well, they got into the 15 and then 3 plays later they made a touchdown. You figure you get in there, they're going to get 3 points anyway. But when you look up there on their side of the field and bam, 6 points, holy cow, And
so it seems, jumping back to the Muhammad League, look, around pick number 6, whoever is, so you're the one that picked Gurley, right?
Gurley's my guy.
Yeah, I picked him in my league too, in the Pirate Football Radio League, 1250 Pirate Radio. So here, 6, 7, 8, and 9 seem to be, these guys maybe are some players right here. The running backs go off the board: Gurley, Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Lamar Miller. Seems a little high for Miller to me.
I think Lamar Miller is going to be a top 3 fantasy back this year.
Really? Wow. Okay.
Lamar Miller was 11th in almost every running back category last year. Yards, receptions per running back, scoring plays. But there was one category he was almost last in all qualifying running backs, and that was touches.
So do you think he is the best pick in round 1 out of all of these picks, where you got him at number 9? Because if you look at it, it's Antonio Brown, Peterson, Julio Jones, Beckham, Cam Newton, Gurley, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, Lamar Miller, DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Freeman, then A.J. Green.
I mean, I think the guy got great value out of him, whoever drafted him, and I do think he's going to be
That was Cam. You do the Cam.
No.
I got number 12.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is he probably wouldn't have gotten him in the second round. So he may have been overdrafted, but if he was overdrafted, I'm saying it's by 3 to 4 picks. So if he wanted him and he has as much faith in Lamar Miller as I have this year, who is my number 1 back in my other league, I think he made the right choice.
I'm with you on that.
Okay. Let's turn to Mel. Are you in? Who are you in this year? You're in Rucker, the league, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay. So for you, in Rucker League, the top picks went Antonio Brown, Ezekiel Elliott, Julio Jones. Todd Gurley gets up there to number 4. Odell Beckham Jr. Then it goes Peterson, Hopkins, David Johnson at 8. Freeman at 9, Green at 10, Jordy Nelson at 11. That's a really high pick for Jordy Nelson.
The guy who hasn't touched the field yet.
And then Allen Robinson, number 12. To me, I feel like this year,
No Panthers there. No Panthers in the first round.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
how did Cam Newton not go in this league number one? Like,
Go look and see where he did go.
That's we're looking at it right now. It's 23rd. You got him, dude. Nice job.
23rd to me. Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, okay. So this seems in both leagues, I feel like so far that wide receivers have gone higher value than I expected.
Yeah, because you would think there would be running backs because there's so few of those 20, 25 touch guys anymore. It's all everybody's getting 10, 15 touches or fewer. You know, there's
But I think that's a byproduct of only having to start one running back.
Exactly.
You know, and then
Yeah.
and last year the real difference makers were Antonio Brown, OBJ, Julio Jones. Those guys, you had them last year. You were sitting pretty in our league.
Allen Robinson creeps into the first round. Is he a first round pick, guys?
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yep. You're talking a
You
guy
got
with
sold on him
1,400
now,
yards.
Chappie?
He had 1,400 yards last year, 15 touchdowns. They throw the ball an awful lot. I think his red zone targets come down a little bit this year with healthy Julius Thomas, and you have to figure in Chris Ivory, who's a good power back in the red zone. But for the most part, I think he's their number one target on a team that throws the ball 40 to 45 times a game.
Yep.
So right there alone, based off of how much they throw and him being the number one target, he is worth the first round pick.
Just going back, Ocean Drive Slim on Twitter. You can find him at Esoteric Cranium. He said, talking about Lamar Miller's value, think of how Miami last year had no plan to run until they made changes. So until you saw the organizational shakeup, and then I guess Lamar Miller becomes, so he's like you guys said, thriving in a system that was working against him.
you know.
Yep.
Okay.
I think he was right about the touches thing. I think Miller's finished in the fantasy top 10 in running backs the last 2 years running, and he averages like 13 carries a game. How's that? Well, that's why I drafted him with Houston. So
I feel like AP at 6. Man, you're getting good value. Adrian Peterson. We haven't had one league where they went running back first yet. In this, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott. Tell us about this. Was the surprise pick, right, Mel? You tweeted out about it. You messaged us before the draft and said you're about to be surprised. Ezekiel Elliott is the
really
surprise.
You said it draft night, and you really went with Zeke.
I did. I feel like this is a guy that's going to have just unbelievable upside between, I mean, Darren McFadden had over 1,000 yards last year behind that line.
mm-hmm.
I think Dak Prescott is going to bring an element to that Cowboys offense that's going to make the defense not be able to stack the box. I mean, they may try, but he's got running ability himself. Ezekiel Elliott's going to get the touches. He's going to get a lot of the short dump down passes from Dak Prescott.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think he's just got a lot of upside.
I want to ask you this, Mel: does Dak Prescott taking over and not having Romo, does it help Ezekiel Elliott's fantasy value? I say it does.
I think it does help. I mean, I think that natural instinct is to say it hurts because people are going to crowd the box, and Romo's not. You're not going to have the guy to throw it deep down to Des Bryant. But I think Dak Prescott. I mean, if he's anything like what you saw in the preseason, I know it's preseason, but the guy brings a whole other element to that offense. Much like a Russell Wilson type of player.
The reason I say that, that it may help too is I feel like the Cowboys are one of those teams that, kind of like New Orleans was. They at one point they have 1 year where they kind of commit to the run. And then all of a sudden, you're finally saying, hey, these guys finally got it. You can't go too pass heavy and hope that you just shoot it out every game. And they did that when they had DeMarco Murray. They had to do it because of injury last year. But I say, Romo's in there. You got Dez crying on the sidelines. And
exactly.
if they're going to, all of a sudden, they'll run the ball 10 times in a game probably if Romo's in there 1 week. So Dak Prescott and him can work together. I mean, if you think about that's kind of like a dual running threat.
I agree.
And I think that they're going to have to incorporate the run game more into their game plan when you got a less experienced quarterback. Okay, so Rob Gronkowski, we see his name pop up at 9. Why has Gronkowski's stock kind of fallen this year a little bit?
I think it's basically the presence of Martellus Bennett is the biggest thing. People are thinking, they're going to run that 2 tight end set, and that Bennett's going to take over and take the old Aaron Hernandez role, and that's going to drop Gronkowski's fantasy production, just enough to make him, not a top 5 pick or a top 6 pick. But
plus, don't forget Tom Brady's being suspended for first.
Yeah, he's being suspended for like 3 games,
good point.
3 or 4 games, whatever. Somebody got one short and a little, but and that was Bell, I think. Anyway, but yeah, he's suspended, but still, you've got still the rest of the team, and they're not. They're going to have Garoppolo, obviously, but they're not unfamiliar with the situation because they thought that was going to happen last year. So, he had last year to prepare too. So, I think they'll be okay. I think it's a little bit of a combination of a couple things like that, like what you said, and then Bennett's presence as well.
So I'm looking at. I flipped over to your league. He dropped into the second round in your league, and you're in C3 Mentor this year, and the way that your draft, Cam Newton goes second overall. Finally, we got some. And here's the thing: is you ain't even gonna believe this. Is more than likely this is by Team Crawford, which could be he's my sister-in-law's boyfriend, and he's not a Panther fan like rabid, and he's the guy that goes and picks Cam at number 2. Here's the thing. We go through all these leagues expecting Panther-heavy draft. Cam Newton, people scared and stay away from him because they don't want to look like fantasy schmucks in the C3 Fantasy League. And then the guy who's not a Panther fan takes him. I say he got the best value. It was a smart move. JP, why is Cam Newton not have this tremendous fantasy value so far? Why isn't he number 1 in this league, in our leagues?
Cam Newton, he's one of those things that obviously we all love him. He's probably going to put up the most fantasy points of anybody this year. But quarterbacks have deeper value to them. So it's hard to sit there, and if you grab a quarterback round 1, you're a step behind, and you're not getting a top-tier running back. You're not getting one of the top-tier receivers. There's value in guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson, and I'm a big fan of having Cam Newton because he has that rushing ability too. And when he adds rushing touchdowns a year,
he's got 50 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's almost like having a running back too, because he doesn't really get the yards of an RB1, but he's great. But in fantasy, I do tend to hold off on them. In my other league, granted it's 8-man, I got him in the 4th round, so I was particularly very happy with that one.
Wow.
In an 8-man league, I think 8-team leagues are cheating in fantasy football.
Yeah,
everybody's got like an all-star team.
That's almost like using a software package when you draft. No, I'm just playing.
Yeah.
An
idiot if you don't put it that way.
Okay. I was gonna say, and let's talk briefly about this. Do you know where Aaron Rodgers went in your draft? I'm looking at you right now in your league. He's not in the 2nd.
He went 6th overall.
Oh, yeah, he did. He went 6 over. Wow.
Aaron Rodgers?
Wow was exactly what I said when I saw it, because I'm sitting there thinking, wow, we got Cam and Rodgers going. That means I'm getting me a bargain.
See what he was. Let me see in Rucker. Let's see. Maybe I can search like this. He goes in the 4th round.
No, Rucker.
Wow, that's good value right there, though.
He went number 40 in Rucker.
No, he went Rucker. He went 23rd. Let's see, 40.
No, that was Cam that went 23rd.
Oh yeah, who? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Who are
Talking
you
about
talking about?
Rodgers,
Aaron,
Aaron Rodgers.
Aaron
Oh,
Rodgers
sorry.
went
Yeah,
40 at fourth round, and then
my bad.
in
Yeah, no worries.
Muhammad, it was he went third round, 33. So here is and I know that everybody's going to say that Aaron Rodgers overdrafted there, and I like the argument that JP made is that you're behind. It's not that these players aren't good, but you're behind the rest of the drafting league in the league. But
He's
here's
exactly right.
I think Aaron Rodgers has, if you got Aaron Rodgers in the third or the fourth, I think that's a deal. I think that, I mean, he had 31 touchdowns last year, and people tried to say he had an off year. He doesn't get any interceptions. He had 8 interceptions or some mess like that. 31 touchdowns, 7 interceptions or something like that.
Yeah,
So,
well, I was just going to say, fantasy drafts are all really about value when you get down to it. If you had one word to describe it, one word to describe a really good strategy would be value.
okay,
That's
yeah.
that's the same in the real draft too.
Yeah,
But
but
isn't that sometimes overthinking it?
no,
Like,
because you have to. I mean, that's the way to win. You've got to get value, and then you've got to get, some that value has to come in big deal, from some maybe a sleeper that you get in mid to late rounds that you
okay,
did that sort of
that's
thing.
an excellent point. Anytime I've won a fantasy football league, I got a starter out of the waiver wire or
Yeah.
deep.
Mhm.
So, JP, in your league, who was a guy that went off the board that you go, damn, that person saw what I saw? Was there a guy you missed on or wanted that you were waiting around for and somebody else was thinking the same thing?
You know, obviously, I wanted Derrick Henry. I still, in every bit of every type of draft, I want Derrick Henry.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love the guy. He went off earlier than I wanted, earlier than I thought he would, so I missed out on him. You know who my
He
big guy?
went one pick after. Oh, he went right at. You picked Alan Hearns right before him.
Yeah, I thought I was going to get a couple more rounds. My
Seventh
problem is I'm
round,
really
Derrick
glad I
Henry.
took Hearns because I have no value. I have no depth at wide receiver. So Alan Hearns was a good pickup for me. But
Okay.
the guy that I really think is going to be good this year, and I hate to say it because he's in our division, I think Colby Fleener is going to be a great tight end this year. We know
I
Drew
think
Brees
that's
loves
right.
his tight ends, and I kind of waited a little bit too long on that one. And
That went the round before. That was round 6,
Yeah.
and went 2 picks. So you were basically trying to grab both of those guys a round back from where they went.
yeah,
Okay, Mel, turning to you. Who was the player that went off the board that you thought either was a great pickup by somebody, and or that you were hoping to grab?
Well, I mean, Derrick Henry is a guy that I got in a separate league, and I was waiting to get him as well, and he was snatched before I was able to get him. So that was definitely one. And I figured one, and again, one great thing about our league is there's different prizes every week, right? So I figured, hey, I'm going to go for the week where you get the most Panther points. So I did stock up on a lot of Panthers. I mean, I've got Cam Newton. I've got Graham Gano. I've got somebody else. I got the Panthers defense. Where did the Panthers D go in these leagues? Because that was one that they went in the second round last year in one of the leagues, but I got them a little bit later, like
What?
maybe the
I
sixth.
got it written down. I was looking quick.
damn.
I remember last year it was crazy.
Panthers D, my league, round 8, pick 90.
There you go. That's about where I got them, I think.
League Mills, round 6, 65. That's early.
What about Rucker League, which is what I'm in?
Rucker League, 6th round, pick 71.
There you
That's
go.
early. And Muhammad,
But you know another guy that
Seventy.
but to answer your question again, Tony, another player that I was looking at other than Derrick Henry was Kevin White. You know, a guy that I really loved last year.
I grabbed him late in my fantasy draft.
Yeah. I think he may start a little slow, maybe, but man, that
Yeah.
guy, he's going to be a stud this year, I think, before it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think he's going to be
Okay.
great this year.
Yep.
I think he's
I
going to
mean,
be
he's got a good quarter. I mean, Cutler is a good fantasy quarterback if he has a good year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He
he's
could
a slinger.
easily go out there and throw 35 touchdowns.
Yep. And Alshon Jeffrey's probably going to get hurt at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think having Alshon there helps Kevin White, though.
Yeah. No.
You
True.
know, may take a lot of attention off him. All right, Ken, who's the guy that went off the board in your league just right that you were hoping would fall to you, or a pick that you went, yeah, that's a good pick. I like that.
Oh, well, there
So
was
it can't be your own pick.
Yeah, right in front of my own pick. Yeah, well, I saw a couple of, sprinkled around in the draft, like when Rashad Jennings went. I thought, yeah, that's a good pick there. When Walker went, that's a good pick. But because I was looking at Dante Moncrief as a receiver.
I like Moncrief this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, he went off the board round 5, number 59. I draft round 5, number 60.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow, right in front of you.
Bam! Yeah. I said, well, gee, look who's left. Drew Brees.
I thought you got to steal, though. You got to steal at 61 with Travis Kelce, though.
Yep. Because I saw
That's
Laney
gonna
Walker.
be he might
good
be
pick.
he may be one of he could sneakily be the top scoring fantasy tight end this year if something were to happen to like Gronk.
Mm-hmm. That's the other thing with the Gronk
Okay.
is an obvious injury. Who knows?
Because Kelce fits what Alex Smith can do, you know. Okay.
He hates
What I
throwing.
was the guy that I'm gonna say is this, and I drafted him in my fantasy league, and I stole him from somebody on purpose. His name is Marvin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I think Marvin Jones had a good year this year, too.
From Detroit. So that was kind of the one. Not Stephen Hill. Who's the Jeremy Hill seemed to fall in my leagues. Did you guys see? Did Jeremy Hill fall? Did he stop dropping y'all's leagues?
It's funny that you mentioned that because I went into this, obviously being a one running back league, I kind of was going to stock up on wide receivers. And I really did plan on going wide receiver in my first 3 picks and just getting 3 studs. Well, I ended up with Gurley, C.J. Anderson, and Jeremy Hill. 3 running backs that you probably should start if they're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So, Hill.
You do get points for carries in this league. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, if you every 5 carries, I think you get a point
Um,
or a quarter
Hill's-
point or something like that.
Hill's stock dropped.
0.2 points. Yeah, per carry.
Hill's stock dropped because last year I'm looking at his stats now. He had 794 yards, 11 touchdowns, but a few fumbles.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he wasn't as effective last year. He looked good in the preseason, but he had a fumble in the preseason game the other night.
Yeah. I got faith in him. I do. I like him a lot. I had him last year, and he did help me. Those goal line touchdowns are phenomenal. He does lose a lot with the not catching the ball with Gio Bernard there, but I still think he's a very valuable fantasy option. And as technically my 3rd running back and my 2nd flex, I couldn't not take him.
Right.
I like Hill. I think he's got a lot of potential. And yes, last year was his 2nd year. It's always that sophomore slump year, as they call it. I don't think that the Bengals offense got better, which is what scares me. You're not talking about a team that has more space around them because of wide receivers. You're not talking about a team that has better O-line unless they show a dramatic increase in years played. That does scare me, but I still think he has the potential to be a 1,000-yard guy, and they have shown confidence in him being the workhorse there still.
So why is it though? See, that seems a very intelligent way of looking at how the depleted wide receiver core could have a impact negatively on the run game. But it seems to me that so many of the so-called fantasy experts just so much focus on how many touches you get. So, rather than in what environment you're getting those touches. So I think that's an interesting way of looking at it. But at the same time, him and Gio could all of a sudden become a tandem like a stud tandem together.
A little double trouble.
Yeah. I like Giovanni Bernard, man. I think that dude is legit. I think he gets kind of overlooked as just an NFL player in general. I think he's dangerous to have on your team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Who's the team? Is there any team or anybody in your league, JP, that drafted a team and you said, man, I like that team?
I've looked through a lot of the teams, and I mean, there's a team here I'm looking at now that you talk even just a half a PPR. Keegan Ass. I mean, he's got Gio Bernard, Odell Beckham Jr., Mike Evans, Fleener, Jarvis Landry, Dante Moncrief. This was another guy that actually I completely forgot about. Josh Gordon. When he comes off his suspension, he's going to be the same guy we saw.
You think so?
Yeah, you know what? The other day in a preseason game, he got 2 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. He's just that good. To where
I hope he does great. That is a pretty, like you said, is that you're going to be getting some points just from catches in that that team.
Odell.
Fleener's going to have like 8 catches a game. Easy.
Odell, Evans, and Landry are good for 10 catches a game each.
Yeah, so that's 15 points right there.
That's 160 catches a season. No, come on.
Well, I mean, Odell might be. Maybe, I'm saying 15 to 20 targets a game. Maybe not Evans, but Landry catches a lot. Odell catches everything. He might go down a little bit with Sterling Shepard there, but I think they're not going to even rely on their run game at all this year, how bad it's looked. I mean, you're talking, these guys are good.
Okay. Ken, is there a team in your league that stuck out other than yours that you go, man, they got a pretty solid draft strategy and outcome?
Yeah, in fact, there are a couple. They're in the same division I'm in. You look at Shack Lives Matter and Buttermilk Biscuits. Some of these names are really good.
I love that one.
Shack Lives Matter. But
what do you like about Shack Lives Matter's team? Tell us a little bit about it.
Let me click on it real quick. Gotta get. Let's see. Shack Lives. Here we go. All right. Well, he's got Zeke Elliott. He's got AJ Green and Demarius Thomas. This running back to receivers. Got Rivers. It really doesn't have a weakness in the starters, but nothing really all that spectacular overall either. It's just really solid all the way through, and he's got a really good bench. So I think what he's going to do is he's going to play the matchup game. He's got Emmanuel Sanders, Devontae Parker, Vjax, Isaiah Crowell, who I think is very underrated fantasy player.
Yeah, but is his head going to be right?
Do what?
There's a lot of questions about his work ethic and some things like that, and how committed he is. So
I'm sorry, I'm looking at there's two. There's two. There's Black Lives Matter and then there's Shack Lives Matter. I was looking at the wrong one, but
okay.
That's a pretty good team too. But this one's the one that's in my division. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick is the quarterback. Pretty good quarterback.
What's the team name?
Shack Lives Matter.
Okay, all right. Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah. He's got running back C.J. Anderson, Odell. He's got Alshon Jeffrey, Antonio Gates, tight end, Eric Decker.
How is that guy still playing football? Seriously.
He's just ageless. I don't know. You always hear about his foot, and his foot's been hurting for like the last 6 years.
17 years.
Yeah, really. Marvin Jones, he's got the Bengals. Like I said, he doesn't have a weakness. Not only does he not really have a weakness, he's got above average pretty much everywhere except maybe it just kind of depends on Gates. But the thing is, he's also got Le'Veon Bell. You got to wait till he gets out of the Hooskow. But after that third week or whatever, he'll have him. He's got John Brown, Danny Woodhead, Amir Abdullah, who's a under-the-radar kind of running back this year, I think. And he picked up Alex Smith off the. I think he picked off Alex Smith off the waiver wire right after the draft because he's 12 out of 12, so he screwed himself on the draft, the waiver wire. But thank you. The cat's knocking things over.
Oh, because he made that pick, it knocked it. Because he made a waiver wire pick before the season's, like it knocked it to last place.
I made that mistake a couple years ago, and I'm like, no. And so I'm drafting last, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to screw up my number one pick. So that's another thing I wanted to hit on a little bit is something that's really not talked about much is waiver wire, because after that first week, you always seem to get 2 or 3, 4 guys who are like some big surprises, have huge games, and people are scrambling to pick those guys up because either they're probably a couple of them on the waiver wire, and if you're not number one on the waiver wire, you're not getting them. So if you're number one on the waiver wire, you get your selection of the whole smorgasbord after that first week.
Can you explain to us how the waiver wire positioning is set? Like, who gets first dibs in week 1? Would have that been the last pick of the draft?
Yeah, it's reverse order of draft pick unless you use it to fix a mistake, like between the draft and the first week, and then it resets and puts you at the bottom. So I'm just not touching it until that first week.
All right, so then after week 1, how does the waiver wire reset?
Now it depends on let's see. It's several things. The standings goes into it, whether you won or lost, and whether you use the waiver, whoever was the last to use the waiver wire. There's several things that go into the mix.
All right. All right, let's turn to Mel real quick. Mel, do you got a team that outside of yours that stuck out to you in your league as being I like that team? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yep, trying to protect you guys from my dogs in the background. But yeah, I like a team. Long live Tony Pike, which that's
I love that name.
Yeah, that's our boy Victor Lepercio. Sorry if I butcher your name out there, Vic, but he's got a strong team in my opinion. You got Ben Roethlisberger, who as long as he's playing, he's a very solid producer in fantasy leagues, and then he's got Marcus Mariota as a backup QB, which I think is smart. Then you got Doug Martin, Julio Jones, Emmanuel Sanders, Greg Olson, Alan Hearns. Now here's one of the reasons I really like this team is you got D'Angelo Williams as a flex. So in the first 4 weeks, that's somebody you were able to pick up late in the draft. And in the first 4 weeks, he's probably going to produce, or at least the first 3 weeks, he's going to produce lights out for you. So I like that strategy.
All right, now I'm going to ask you guys each a little bit about your teams real quickly. And Mel, when you went into the draft, tell us what your overall kind of thoughts were walking in and how that shook out and changed as the draft unfolded.
Well, actually, my strategy typically going into a fantasy draft is if you can, you want to get an elite player at 3 different positions. If you can get quarterback, running back, and wide receiver studs, in the first 3 rounds. So typically, if people are waiting on the quarterbacks and you can get a stud QB in round 3, if there's fewer running backs, you can get a running back in round 1 and then a receiver. But it kind of, like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. And everybody gets punched in the mouth in a fantasy football draft. Nothing goes the way you expected. But I took Ezekiel in the first round. I was planning on taking as much of a stud of a wide receiver as I possibly could in round 2. But about the time we got to around pick 15, 16, I could not believe Cam Newton was not coming off the board. And I was just floored that he was still there at pick 23. So I had to go away from my wide receiver plan and take Cam Newton at pick 23, and then come back and get a wide receiver in the next round.
You guys, everybody better be glad that I wasn't playing or wish I was playing because I would have straight taken Cam number one. Just been like Cam. Just
But you know
rack it
what?
up.
My team's name is the Chosen One, and I had in my mind for a day or two that I was going to take him at number 2. But then I just fell in love with Ezekiel Elliott the more and more I thought about it. So I went Elliott, and that he was there in round 2 at the end of round 2. I was just amazed.
So were you able to secure the third component? You're almost like what you're trying to do is just make a championship basketball team. It sounds like.
Yeah, and instead of
bring the three stars together.
yeah, try to bring in the triplets, But instead of going 2 stud running backs, I want to go 1 stud running back, 1 stud wide receiver, 1 stud quarterback. Now, I did not get my stud wide receiver. So if anybody out there wants to trade, hey. But no, I mean, my wide receivers are Eric Decker, which is a solid wide receiver, but he's not great. Then I got Vincent Jackson, which I'm not real in love with. Now I've got a couple guys that could really come out. They're sleepers, like Sterling Shepard with the Giants. I think he could be a heck of a player. And then rookie Michael Thomas down there in New Orleans. I think he's got some upside, but you don't really want to play him week 1 or week 2. So I did not get my wide receiver because, I think everybody else seeing that, like JP was saying earlier, they're loading up on wide receiver. So I didn't get one until round 3, and you could tell by my roster.
Okay, Ken, tell us how you approach this draft because we're gonna wrap up after this in just a moment, and we'll have Ken give us some overall comments about it. But how did you walk into the draft, and how did it change as things unfolded for you?
Well, again, walk in looking for value, especially when you're picking last, and you get those 2 picks back to back, and then you go a long time without drafting anybody, and you got to draft 2. And
right.
It helps simplify the draft in that okay, this group of guys in this range are probably not going to be available to me. So you plan on the next group of guys while looking for those sliders to come to you. And I didn't have to wait long. I got Lamar Miller in the first round, and then DeAndre Hopkins at number 13, and I thought Hopkins was going to be long gone. But I got a top 5 running back and a top 5 wide receiver right there. And I think what really made my draft was not the next 2 guys, which I took both running backs with the flex position in mind, but was those next 2 when I went and saw Drew Brees was there in the 5th round, and I could grab Travis Kelce in the 6th. So you're talking about studs. I've got studs at like 3 or 4 spots. And I went and took backup quarterback Jameis Winston, so I've got 2 top 10 rated quarterbacks. Winston's like a 6 or a 9, I can't remember. So I've got pretty much coverage in case I get one major injury, which is not going to necessarily knock me completely out of the league, like say if I had Bridgewater or something like that.
Right.
So there's a little insurance there, building in injuries. Kind of a dash of a little bit of everything that people use, goes in there, and then, like y'all say, it goes out the window when the draft starts. You see, like I said, you see Drew Brees sitting there at the end of the 5th round. You saw those 2 quarterbacks go in the top 5 picks, the top 6 picks. You think, wow, here's like the number 3 or 4 rated quarterback, and I'm, waiting 5 rounds later to get him. So I didn't have to waste an early pick to get, a high-end quarterback. So you always have to be on the lookout for those type of guys. And then when you get them, then you have to adjust everything else because quarterback's not necessarily a priority when you've already got Drew Brees. So it affects everything else. So you really, it's an art form.
JP, you talked about how you planned on only going 1 running back and then found yourself with the stable. What was it that changed? They just slid to you? It just fell that way? Or how did you adapt mid-draft?
I don't know, because I didn't think Gurley was going to fall that far. But also, I kind of always anticipate having the horrible, early first draft, early in the first round. where I would have grabbed a guy like a Julio Jones or something.
Right.
But I ended up they kept falling to me, and not even at bad value because I don't have bad wide receivers either. I do have Brandon Marshall and Brandon Cooks. So it's not like I went too running back heavy and didn't get any wide receivers. Really, my weakest position outside of depth, because I don't really have much depth. I have a lot of guys who I'm kind of hoping can fill in. But my weakest position's got to be tight end, where I have Gary Barnidge.
Well, could you could trade one of those if you're a running back heavy? You could make a big trade. You can get some real value with one of those guys.
Oh, exactly.
Barnage is pretty daggone good, I think.
He's the only tight end I have on my team.
Yeah.
My theory with wide receivers is I don't like to draft anybody who, at least early on, who didn't have more than 1,000 yards the year before. I'm not going to pick in the 5th round that guy who had, 600 yards and 4 touchdowns because he could look better this year. That's why I went with a guy like Brandon Cooks was, my second wide receiver. He was over 1,000 yards. Drew Brees is looking his way a lot. Brandon Marshall, they're looking at him all the time. And it is my team name. But no, I did lack on depth a lot. I have a bunch of guys who I just hope do great. I mean, Alan Hearns is very good. But then I have Dorsett, Boyd, and Sharp. But I had to go with Sharp after watching what he did against the Panthers because they throw to him a lot. It's a half a point per reception. And I think that he could be a good fill-in guy. And
I got Dorsett in like the 11th round in my league or something like that. 12th round.
I got him
late.
I got him off the waiver wire.
Really?
And I go with Ken and I don't grab off the waiver wire. But I was right in the middle anyways, and I saw him sitting there, and I had to grab him. There was no chance that I wasn't.
I got him real late. I just thought, all right, who's a guy that could maybe be a dude that's going to be on a team that I feel like fantasy experts are so fickle from last year's stats. They are so bound to what the last year was.
Devonta Freeman is a prime example. He is overrated this year.
Overrated.
You think so? I like him. I don't like him in Atlanta. I don't.
He's not a first-round talent. He's not a first-round talent. No way.
I think
and they showed that they got away from him, and that's when they stopped. That's when they started losing. I know he got dinged up a little bit.
He ran out of gas late. He just wasn't himself. He wasn't the same player he was the first half season. So that shows he's not a workhorse type. Use Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, I also think Tevin Coleman is going to take a lot of touches away from him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that he sees as much action as he did last year. They're going to want to go to that 2-back set type deal. I don't really get too caught up in running backs. I like the guys who I just understand that there's not much behind them. A guy like C.J. Anderson, yeah, Devontae Booker's there, but you don't know what he's going to do. He is the guy that they're going to go to most of the time, and you're never going to find a guy outside of maybe Adrian Peterson or Todd Gurley that's really the guy who gets 35 touches a game and the other guys get 4 or 5 each. You're going to deal a lot with, he gets 15, this guy gets 10, this guy gets 5.
Right.
So,
they haven't put in the projected points yet for players.
They haven't?
No. It's crazy.
For this week of play?
For regular season week 1.
They're probably waiting to get the preseason to get through and see what the injury situation is.
Yeah, they have done it. All right, so I'm just going to go real quick, JP. Let me say you were playing After Dinner Mentor, Mike After Dinner Mentor in week 1, who won a T-shirt for best team name in y'all's league. Phillip Rivers, David Johnson, T.Y. Hilton, Demaryius Thomas, Delaney Walker, Mark Ingram, Jordan Matthews, the Vikings defense, and Gostowski. Is that going to be, do you got it in the bag, or are you nervous?
David Johnson's good, but you have to worry about New England's front stopping him. T.Y. Hilton's good. We got to see how Luck looks. Rivers is one of my favorite QBs in this league. I think he's always a good option. Demarius Thomas is going to go for 0 catches and 0 yards because, he's facing the Panthers.
Oh, Bradbury's going to shut him out.
Bradbury's going to shut him up and shut him out. Ingram against Oakland's front seven. I don't know if I like it. He's got a good team. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot to like about his team. He's got good depth in Derrick Henry and Michael Thomas. I think I just have more favorable matchups with my top-end guys, being that I have, Gurley against San Francisco, which isn't a great front seven anymore. Eli Manning against Dallas. I have more favorable matchups, but he does have a good team. And Phillip Rivers always comes out swinging, so he's a guy who should scare you. And if New England's not feeling it that night, David Johnson could put a big hurt on them.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let me see. I'm going to jump over to Mel. Well, let's go to Ken. And Ken's league, you're playing Bortle Milk Biscuits for this week. He's got Bortles, Freeman, Moncrief, Floyd, Gronkowski, McCoy, Gore, Packers defense, and Blair Walsh. How do you feel about his team matching up against yours in week 1?
I think he's got one of the better teams in the league. I think the top 3 teams, I think the best 3 teams are all in my division. And this is one of them, the Bortle Milk Biscuits. The thing is, though, this first week, like JP was saying, you look at my matchups, I don't have, I've got maybe one scary kind of defense, Cincinnati.
Right.
But look who else I'm playing. Oakland, Breeze, against Oakland, but Breeze is going to put some numbers on the board against anybody. You got Lamar Miller and DeAndre Hopkins both going against the Bears. That's hadn't been scary since the 90s. Michael Crabtree against the New Orleans Saints defense. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Travis Kelce against San Diego. San Diego's defense should be better, but they got a long way to go still. Latavius Murray against New Orleans. So I've got a couple of deals here. I've got a running back and a receiver on the same team, which actually is going to make me more consistent because if the receiver's not getting the love, then chances are the running back is.
Okay.
Then I've got the Vikings against Tennessee. I don't see Tennessee being an explosive team game 1. And Mason Crosby.
I think they're going to be better than people think.
Yeah, but not game 1. I don't think they're not going to come out game busters. It's going to take them a little while to get to jail, I think.
Yeah, I can see that.
And plus, you've got some on the other side. You've got some matchups. We don't really know what Devonta Freeman's going to be this year. He's obviously going to be fresh. He's going against Tampa Bay, which is a good matchup for him. So there's that. He's got Moncrief against Detroit, good matchup there. But the thing is, Blake Bortles, I've got Breeze. I'll take Breeze over Bortles anytime. But he's playing Green Bay, so the thing is there, he might get those 40, 45 attempts, maybe even 50.
Right.
So,
okay,
I think I'm going to win this, but it's going to be a little closer than it's going to be comfortable.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Mel, what about your matchup? I do not have it pulled up. Do you?
I am playing my Sharona.
Okay.
And the only thing that's going to give me a good shot possibly against her is she has Le'Veon Bell, who obviously is suspended. But she's got a tough team. She very easily could beat me. It's just depending on how Sunday goes. She has Carson Palmer at QB. She's got Allen Robinson. She's got Tyler Lockett. She has Jonathan Stewart. At tight end, she's got Jordan Reed. She's also at flex. She has Jeremy Langford from the Bears and the Steelers defense. So, and she's got Derrick Henry on her bench, who will probably take Le'Veon Bell's spot. But Sharona, if you're listening out there, just leave Le'Veon Bell in your starting lineup, and all will be good.
Okay, so all right, overall impressions of the 2016 C3 Fantasy Football Draft. I'll start with JP.
I've never been in a league like this, so it's definitely intimidating. The idea of what I find the most intimidating and funny about it is in the championship game, you can essentially face your own team.
Yes.
Many of the same guys.
Yes.
Yeah.
While you're sitting there pulling for, Julio Jones, he might be the guy catching it on the other side of you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
Or you could be
Which
the
is
guy
actually
backing
kind
up.
of good. Is that in some ways, like if their star player you also have, sometimes it takes. I mean, that takes them out of the game.
Yep.
um, this league comes down more than any league to who you find later in the rounds and on the waiver wire and those type of guys.
Mm-hmm.
I think your first 6 picks in a league really don't matter because you're going to get guys anyways. You can auto draft your first 6, come for 7 through whatever the last round is, and that's how you win a league. So I really think that this comes down to stuff like that, and it's going to come down to the waiver wire and who you pick up and who's watching.
I think is that if you are actively managing your team in a league, like that's what it requires in a league that has so many parts to it, right?
Yeah.
The other thing that I think that you also pointed out is that we reduced the benches by, was it 2 spots, Ken, from what the default is?
I think so. It's short on the bench, so you can't really
Because
stock them.
and we did that so to help encourage people or force people to be more active rather than dropping great players on the bench and then just stashing them while everybody else languishes in pain because of some injury. All right, Ken, you've studied this draft closely. What are your overall impressions from the third? This is the third annual C3 Fantasy Football Challenge.
Mm-hmm. It's just getting interesting to see how 4 different drafts, 4 identical drafts in different leagues go. You know, just to see where people go. Like we were talking about earlier, how Funchess went in like the early 3rd round. That's crazy high. I mean, I can see the homerism, and yeah, he's got some upside, but does he have that kind of upside? I don't really think so. I don't think he's the 25th best player or whatever. But and then you got other leagues like my league. I think he went in the 8th round. I was thinking about drafting him, passed on him, and then he went like 3 picks later. It just and then you had the 2 quarterbacks go in the top 5 in mine, and that didn't happen in the other 3. It's just neat to see how things flow in one league as opposed to they're going the opposite way in another league, and you wonder why. It's just
styles. A lot of it has to do with just the style of what you think and what's worked for you in the past. I had a couple of things that worked for me in the past, and then I just try to replicate those year after year, and it doesn't work because you kind of just got to catch lightning in a bottle. You got to get Larry Johnson on the waiver wire when Priest Holmes injures his neck, and that's how you win a fantasy football league right there.
You got to like when I drafted Josh Gordon in the 12th or 14th round was the year that he led the NFL in receiving yards. I won the league championship last year.
That's what wins football for you. All right, Mel, third time in the fantasy football, the C3 Fantasy Football Challenge. When I bounced this idea off of you to start the C3 Fantasy Football Challenge, you thought it was a little zany. Now we're 3 years in. 3 years in, you've been in your 3rd draft. What was your overall impression?
I was correct. It's totally zany, but that's what makes it work, man. I love it. I love that it's 48 Panther fans that you're commiserating with every week. You're having fun with, right? I mean, you're not dealing with some dude who's a Arizona Cardinal fan. Everybody in this league loves the Panthers, so it's just fun and seeing the different strategies and how everybody's doing. And like JP said, the prospect of playing somebody with your same players on your team down the road, man, it really makes you think about what you're doing about balancing your team up and down the board. So it's different and so much fun.
All right, awesome. All right, guys, we're going to get out of here. I do want to say this is that we will be trying our best, and I'm making the commitment right now, but I've made the commitment in the past and floundered on it, We're going to be rocking a C3 Fantasy Football Challenge podcast. This podcast can be devoted to the C3 Fantasy Football Challenge to make it as enjoyable as possible for all the players. Look, I know at times you can't listen. We're trying to do them 30, 45 minutes or something, but here's what I ask every person in this league to do is continue to cheer for the Panthers and get on those message boards and have fun. I have been working in my head, how can I write a fictional short story about one of the leagues? So that's what I'm trying to bounce around. But this is the C3 Fantasy Football Podcast brought to you by CarolinaCatChronicles.com. Be sure to check out our Tuesday night podcast, the C3 Carolina Panthers podcast, where we chop up the latest Panther fan news from the fan perspective. Guys, thanks for joining me, and we'll see some of you next week. We hope you all can make it. If not, I'm sure you'll be popping throughout the season.
All right. Sounds fun. A lot of fun, guys.